I was the one who kept the lights on while everyone else slept. That's what it felt like most nights, sitting in that cold office with the hum of the vending machine and the little red exit sign staring at me like a tiny mean eye. My boss would say, "You're such a team player," and then he'd pat my shoulder and walk out with his gym bag, and I'd be left to finish the reports that just needed a quick review. The client calls that shouldn't take long, the spreadsheet that someone has to do. Someone always meant me. Me with the coffee breath and the aching wrists and the phone on silent because I couldn't handle another text from my sister asking if I'd picked up mom's prescription yet. Me the responsible one, the adult child that means what it sounds like, the one who's still a child to someone somewhere but never allowed to be one. 3 times he said it, 3 times in 3 years. There was no budget for raises. He'd say it like a bad weather report. I wish I had better news with that sad mouth that never touched his eyes. We're tightening belts, uncertain economy, we need to be lean. He'd pull out words that only mattered to him. Pipeline, runway, burn rate. He never said, "I'm choosing not to pay you more because I don't have to." He never said, "I am going to buy something shiny with the money you made me." He never said, "I am lying." In between those meetings, life went on. Not for me, not in the way people hope. There was the day I got a bold red email subject line telling me I had left the server unlocked. I read it while a nurse was adjusting my mother's blood pressure cuff. My mother kept saying she was fine, that I didn't have to be there, that my sister could handle it for once. But my sister had sent me a thumbs up and then nothing, and I knew what that meant. It was on me. So I wore my backpack to the hospital like a turtle shell, laptop, charger, snacks. I typed while Mom watched the weather. My boss called and said, "Is this a good time?" He knew where I was. He knew it wasn't. He wanted the report anyway. He wanted it yesterday. He wanted me to say, "Yes, of course." And I did, because my mom needed her meds and my rent was due, and I had this idea that showing up would save me. If I just kept showing up, I would be someone they couldn't ignore. After each no-budget speech, there'd be a celebration of nothing. "We're doing a pizza party," he'd say like that was a present. One time he got us cupcakes with the company logo in edible ink. They tasted like sugar and printer. He stood in the break room and clapped his hands and said we were a family. He always said that. "We're a family here." He would go around and say our names and some little tidbit like Jesse ran a marathon last summer. He never knew that I was running marathons every night in my head trying to solve other people's messes. The day everything cracked wide open was a normal day. I was so tired I could feel my pulse in my teeth. I was scrolling because I couldn't scroll, my eyelids closed. Thumb up, thumb up, thumb up. The usual baby's dog sourdough bread workouts. Then like a little cartoon of a knife, there it was. My boss's face sunburned and grinning with a caption that said, "Meet Serenity, now the newest member of the family." And behind him, blue water so blue it hurt a deck shining like new teeth, a smile on his wife's face, kids with their arms thrown up like someone won the lottery. The next picture, him holding a bottle of champagne foam everywhere. The next, a close-up of the name painted on the side in fancy letters. The next, a sleek angle that made it look like the yacht could slice the whole ocean in half. I stared at it until my screen dimmed. I tapped it back on. I stared again. No budget. The exact words were in my head like drum beats. No budget, no budget, no budget. The whole time I was thinking about what else those 2 words had cost me. Missed birthdays because I was covering a late shipment. Splitting up pills in the bathroom because the pharmacy messed up and my coworker had called to ask if I could just jump on one more call. Crying in my car and then wiping it all away because I had to go inside and smile and share cupcakes and say how grateful I was to be part of family. That family had a yacht. My family had a plastic shower chair and a jar with change in it. My phone dinged. It was my sister. "Mom needs groceries." Of course she did, of course. I sent the post to my friend at work, call him Leo, who had 3 kids and a minivan that made a noise like a dying bird. I said nothing, just a question mark. He wrote back, "Are you kidding me?" Then I knew it. Then no budget, my A. He didn't type the rest. He didn't have to. By lunch, everyone knew. It was like someone whispered into the air and the air got excited. You could feel the buzz in the hall. People were showing each other their phones like they'd found a weird bug. Someone put it up on the big screen in the conference room for a second and then yanked it down with red cheeks when the boss walked by. He stood in the doorway and smiled like everything was fine. He said, "Hey, team." And I wanted to ask which team. The one that bought your boat or the one that gets pizza when they ask for raises? We had a team meeting that afternoon. He opened with the usual, "I'm so proud of this group." He looked us in the eyes one by one like he thought that made him honest. He talked about projections, about opportunities. He said the words lean and agile, and I got stuck on the fact that I was neither. I was heavy with the weight of his ask, big with the burden of his not now, maybe later, keep grinding. When he said there were headwinds, I almost laughed. He said it like a sailor. I stared at his mouth and thought, you practiced that in a mirror, didn't you? At the end, he said, "I know compensation is top of mind. I want you to know we hear you." He had that bit ready too. He looked sad again. He said, "We just don't have the budget right now." He said it like the sky was to blame. Some people nodded. I did not. I looked at the table because if I looked at him, I would say what I was thinking, which was, that boat looks expensive. That night I pulled up my bank app and stared at the numbers like they might move out of pity. They did not. My mom texted, "Love you." My sister texted nothing. I threw a dish towel over my shoulder and opened my laptop again. I wrote down every late night, every weekend, every time I had covered for someone who left. I opened old emails and took screenshots. The one where he said we were holding off on merit increases. The one where he said, "We're counting on your dedication. Can you put in some extra hours this week? We'll remember it." The one where he said, "We don't have the budget for raises, but good news, we're doing a wellness workshop." I wanted to print them all and tape them to his boat like warning labels. I made a little spreadsheet because that's my language. I put in our head count. I put in average raises we'd asked for. I put in our revenue from the last quarter, which he had bragged about in a newsletter. I put in his yacht number. I didn't know the exact price, but the internet painted the picture. That thing was worth more than I would make in 10 years of being a good soldier. The numbers on my screen looked fake. They looked like a joke. They made me feel sick. The next day I brought donuts. I put them in the break room and sat down with Leo. We didn't talk for a minute. We just ate sugar like it could be courage. Then I said I made something. I showed him the spreadsheet. He stared. He said, "Holy." He pushed his glasses up and said again softer like he was talking to himself, "Holy." We printed it. We made copies. We left them in the places where people would see them, but it wasn't obvious who put them there. On the printer tray, in a folder on the shared drive called Birthday Ideas. On the corkboard next to the flyer for the company picnic. By lunch, someone had made it a PDF and sent it to our group chat. I could feel my heart beating in my ears. Part of me was scared. Part of me felt alive for the first time in weeks. Tell the truth and shame the devil, my grandmother used to say. The truth was simple. There was money. The decision was a choice. At 2, HR called me in. The HR lady smiled like a doctor before a shot. She asked me how I was and didn't wait for the answer. She said she wanted to check in. She asked if I had concerns. I said yes. She said, "Okay, let's talk about it." She had a notebook on the table, open but blank. I told her about the hours. I told her about the promises. I told her about the no budget and the yacht. I said it out loud, and the word sounded funny in my mouth like it didn't belong to people like me. She didn't blink. She said, "We don't comment on personal purchases." She said, "Compensation decisions are complex." She said, "We value you." She said nothing that meant anything. Then she said, "I can't speak to the rumor mill." "It's not a rumor," I said, and I sounded calm even though my hands were shaking under the table. "He posted it. People share all kinds of things online," she said, and I had a flash of wanting to pull up the photo and hold it 2 inches from her face. But I didn't. I breathed. I said, "So there is a budget for that." She said again slowly, like maybe I was the child who needed things clear, "We do not discuss personal finances." Then she smiled, the kind of smile that says, "Are we done here?" I left her office feeling like I had walked through a fog of perfume and lies. When I got back to my desk, there was an email waiting. It was from my boss. Subject line, "Quick chat." He closed his door behind me. He kept his voice low like we were in a church. He said, "I understand you've been stirring the pot." "I brought donuts," I said. He didn't laugh. He folded his hands. His watch flashed a little green light. He said, "I know the optics around my boat aren't ideal, but you need to understand, that's a personal decision. It's not connected to company finances." "Then where does the money come from?" I asked. I was proud of how steady I sounded. "It doesn't grow on trees." He frowned. "I don't appreciate the tone. I don't appreciate being told there's no budget when clearly there is." He sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. He said, "There's a difference between corporate budget allocations and personal." "Money is money," I said. "If the company can pay you enough to buy a yacht, the company can pay me enough to afford groceries without checking my bank account first." His eyebrows went up like I had said something rude. He leaned back and made a little tent with his fingers. "You need to be careful," he said. "Attitudes like this can be toxic. You have a lot of people who are happy here." "Are they?" I asked. "Or are they scared?" The word hung there. I could feel the air change. He looked at the door like he wished someone would knock and save him. No one did. He said, "I'm going to be honest with you. Posts like those, whispers like these, they hurt morale. If you can't be a team player, maybe this isn't the place for you." Maybe this isn't the place for you. There it was, the threat and the invitation all in one. I stared at him and thought about my mom in her chair, about my sister, who always had an excuse about the nights, in the office eating stale crackers and whispering to the copier, "Please don't jam." I thought about the time I had stayed until sunrise to fix a problem he had created and get a pat on the back at 9 and a joke about my dedication at lunch. I thought about the fact that I had given them all my best and all my rest, and the return on that investment was a boat I couldn't even stand on without it feeling like a betrayal. "Okay," I said. "Maybe it isn't." He blinked. He wasn't ready to lose. He was used to me folding, not standing up. He said, "Let's not be rash. Let's think about your future here." I said, "For years." He opened his mouth, closed it. He reached for a standby. "We're a family." "Families don't lie like this," I said. My voice cracked. I let it. "Families don't ask and take and pretend you should be grateful." He shifted in his chair. I think you're very emotional right now. I think I'm finally not numb, I said. That night I wrote my resignation. I kept it short. I said I could give 2 weeks and then I deleted that part. I couldn't give 2 more days. My mother needed me. I needed me. Leo sent me a text with an open eye emoji like, "Are you watching?" The group chat was on fire. People were sharing other posts of the boss on the yacht. Him in a captain's hat. Him making a joke about burn rate and a caption about fuel. Someone had screenshotted the comments where his friends said, "Well deserved," and "boss life," and "work hard, play harder." I felt something twist and then uncoil in me. I had worked hard and it had made him rich and I was supposed to clap. Before I hit send, I did one more thing. I wrote a letter to the state labor board. I sent them the screenshots of the emails where he had asked me to work late, to work weekends, to work off the clock. Just this once, just until the end of the quarter. I sent the spreadsheet. I sent the pay stubs that didn't match the hours. I told them I wasn't the only one. I told them I was willing to talk. Then I posted something simple on my own page. When your boss says there's no budget for raises and then buys a yacht, believe what he values. It's not you. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. People knew. People always know. The comments came in waves. Friends from old jobs wrote, "I feel this." Strangers wrote same. One person wrote, "We're hiring." I blinked at that one. I clicked. It was a smaller company, local. It did the kind of work where you could see a finished thing and touch it and say, "I did that." I sent my resume. I wrote a note. I was honest. I said, "I'm leaving a place that called itself a family and treated me like a doormat. I want something different." My sister called. She was mad. "You can't just quit," she said. "What about the bills?" I could hear the TV in the background at our house, the kids shouting. "You're being selfish." "I've been the opposite of selfish," I said. "I am breaking my back for everyone." "Well," she said, and I could hear the judgment dripping. "Maybe you should have picked a better career path." I laughed. It sounded wild in my own ears. "You think I chose this so I could get rich? I chose it because I'm good at it. It just chose to bleed me dry." She sighed and hung up. My mom texted a few minutes later. "Proud of you. Come over tomorrow. We'll make pancakes." The labor board moved slower than the internet, but they moved. An investigator called me. She had a voice like a friend. She asked careful questions. I answered. She asked about others. I gave them names only after I asked if it was safe. She promised to keep it confidential. I believed her more than I believed my boss. A week later, she called back. "You're not the only one," she said. "We're opening a case." Meanwhile, the office was in meltdown. People whispered. HR held listening sessions. My boss stopped posting the boat. That made it worse. Silence is an admission sometimes. Someone leaked the yacht photos to a local news blog. They did a story about working people vs leadership optics. They blurred out faces, but anyone with a brain knew. There was a quote from an anonymous employee about pizza parties and no budget. I felt equal parts sick and vindicated. The comments on the article were a mix. Some people said boss earned it. Some said raise your people. One said unionize. That word made my heart sit up. People started meeting in the parking lot after work. They held coffee cups like talismans. They spoke in low tones. They said words like dues and rep and grievance. They looked scared and brave at the same time. I wasn't there, but they told me. They sent me texts with little flame emojis. My boss called again. He left a voicemail, a small, tight one. "This is not how we do things. You're burning bridges." I listened twice, amazed. He always used fire words when he wanted to scare me. Burn rate, burning bridges, heat. He thought I would be afraid of flames. He didn't know I had lived in them and learned how to walk through. I got the job at the smaller company. The interview was so normal it was almost weird. No grand speeches. No, we're a family. The owner, a woman in a sweater with a coffee stain on the sleeve, said, "We pay on time. We pay what we say. We can't promise big perks. We can promise honesty." I almost cried in the chair. I said, "That's all I want." She said, "Can you start next month?" I said, "I can start Monday." I sent my resignation, no 2 weeks. I referenced the labor laws about hostile environments and unpaid overtime. I hit send. I put my badge in an envelope and mailed it so no one had to see me hand it over like a dog turning in a bone. Leo texted a single word, respect. Others sent emojis that looked like confetti and fireworks. One person sent a message at 2 in the morning that said, "You gave me courage." I thought I was crazy. I turned my phone face down and stared at the ceiling and felt something like guilt and something like relief. Then I slept. For the first time in months, I slept like a person who wasn't waiting for their phone to ring. A month later, the labor board sent a letter. Back pay for overtime, fines. The company had to change some policies. They had to send a notice to all employees explaining overtime rules. The best part was boring. Numbers on a page, checks in the mail. I held mine and didn't feel rich. I felt recognized. It wasn't everything I lost. It was something. It was an adult way of saying you were right. They were wrong. I heard through the grapevine that my boss didn't lose his job. Of course he didn't. Men like that float. But he had to step down from some committee. His title lost a word. His face lost a little glow when people saw him in the hall. That sounds petty, but it mattered. He had been untouchable. He was not anymore. People had a word for what he had done now, not no budget, but choices. At my new job, my first week, the owner came around and asked everyone, "How are you?" Really. We were making something with our hands and my hands remembered how to do things that were not just tapping. At lunch, someone said, "We don't do pizza parties here. If we have extra money, we bump pay." It was like hearing a language you didn't know existed. I called my mom and told her and she laughed and said, "Sounds like a good family," and we both laughed at that word. Do I sound bitter? Maybe. But I'm also loud with the truth now. I want to say this to anyone who is scrolling at midnight with a knot in your stomach and a boss with a smile that makes you small. You are not crazy. If your hours go up and your pay stays the same, someone is eating the difference. If they say, "We're a family," ask who gets tucked in at night and who is doing the dishes. If they say no budget and then post a picture of a toy that costs more than the house you grew up in, believe them. It's not that there is no budget, it's that you are not on it. People will tell you to be patient. They will say it in a voice that makes you feel like a child asking for dessert. They will tell you stories about how it all pays off if you keep your head down. Sometimes it does. Sometimes all it pays for is their boat. I wish I had left sooner. I wish I had believed the little voice in my head that said, "This is not right." I wish I had never hunched over a spreadsheet with tears in my eyes trying to make numbers lie for someone who could not be bothered to tell the truth. But wishing is not a plan. What I did have was proof, and a spine I thought was broken but wasn't. I had friends who nodded and said, "Me too," and that felt like a kind of magic. And in the end, I had a new job and a check that said, "You were owed." My boss is probably on his yacht right now eating something I can't pronounce, listening to a playlist that includes songs about being a boss. I hope he enjoys it. I mean that in a kind way and also not. I hope every wave that slaps the hull is a little reminder that water finds its level, and so do people. He found his. I found mine. The other day I walked my mom to the park. She moved slow, but she moved, and she held my arm tight. The sun was the cheap kind that warms your shoulders in little patches. We sat on a bench and watched a kid throw a ball too high and a dog jump too far and a couple argue and then laugh. My phone buzzed. Leo sent a picture of a flyer. "Union meeting tonight." I smiled. My mom asked, "Good news?" I said yes. And it was. I am not sorry for the donuts. I am not sorry for the spreadsheet. I am not sorry for the labor board letter or the post. I am not sorry that I stopped being a team player in a game that was rigged. I am not sorry that I chose me finally after years of choosing everyone else. If that burns a bridge, then maybe that bridge led to nothing but water I was never going to be allowed to swim in. When your boss says there's no budget for raises and then posts photos of his new yacht, that's not a story about the economy. That's a story about you and how they weigh you and whether you are ballast or cargo or a person. Don't let them decide. Decide yourself. Walk if you can. March if you can't. Crawl if you have to, but move. I don't know who needs to hear this, probably someone whose eyes hurt and who has a browser tab with yacht listings open because they are nosy and furious and right. But you aren't alone. Your work is worth more than pizza. Your time is not a donation. The family you're giving up game nights and sleep for might have a captain's hat hidden in a drawer. Don't wait for it to fall out onto your lap to believe it. Believe you. Believe your tired bones. Believe your bank account. Believe the way your chest tightens when someone says no budget and you just know there's a bright white deck somewhere with your hours soaked into it like varnish. I'm done. I'm free. I'm tired. I'm also rested for the first time in a long time. I keep the labor board letter in a folder on my desk not because of the money, but because of what it says about truth. It's a piece of paper that says, "We see you." I take it out sometimes when my hands start to shake and I want to second guess myself. Then I put it away and I go make something. I go home and make pancakes with my mom. I go to sleep without my phone next to my ear. I wake up and put on shoes that don't hurt. I used to think that love and loyalty meant staying no matter what. People use those words to keep you small. Turns out love and loyalty can mean leaving too. Leaving the person who lies with a straight face. Leaving the party where you aren't fed. Leaving the team that calls you family but would throw you overboard if it kept the boat light. If that makes me a bad team player, fine. If that makes me emotional, fine. If that makes me the one who stirred the pot, I hope it keeps boiling. Because some of us are still hungry and we deserve more than crumbs. We deserve a seat at the table. We deserve at the very least not to be told no budget while someone pops champagne on a boat we built with our backs.